Evolve Mutations from Heavyocity. All right, Evolve Mutations. That's what we're going to look at here in this video, and we're going to go over everything that's in the manual. So this is the only Evolve Mutations video you will need to watch to understand exactly how it works. Now, Evolve Mutations is different from Evolve, although they are both rather old libraries. Evolve Mutations is around 9-10 years old here in 2019, but all of these libraries are different. Evolve Mutations and Mutations 2, they're all different libraries. They all sound different, although they are all in the same sort of cinematic percussion, cinematic toolkit category. And while Evolve Mutations is around 10 years old, it still sounds, really, really good. I'm just using one key there and triggering all of these different instruments with just one key. Another side note is this interface here that you see, the way it's laid out, is actually very similar to the original Evolve interface, but Evolve has since been updated to have a new interface that more matches the interface of Evolve Mutations 2. But in this video, we're going to focus on Evolve Mutations. We'll take a look at the interface, at all of the different instruments, the multis, and of course, other stuff along the way. There will be timecode in the description below if you want to hop around. So let's go ahead and get started with Evolve Mutations. Okay, and here is Evolve Mutations. Evolve Mutations is, of course, for Kontakt. We have that loaded up here in Pro Tools. You can, of course, run Kontakt in standalone or any other DAW that you want. But Evolve Mutations includes two categories. We have instruments here, so single instruments, and then multis. And multis are made up of single instruments, all right? We'll get to that in a minute, but we do have some in here that are pre-set up for us. We have different kinds of instruments, percussive, tonal, here's percussive kits, stings, and transitions, tonality, and effects. What we are interested in right now is the interface. So let's just load this up and take a look at how it works. And all of these interfaces will look the same. So percussive kit, let me just throw something in there. Same kind of interface. Color is a little bit different, but as you can see, essentially the same thing, same controls. All right. Just going to grab something here and throw that in there so you can see all of those are the same. So we'll start up here with our Rhythmic suite and start here in the effects section. So we have a screamer, a lo-fi, a delay, and a reverb. You can see that in all of these here. So all the same there, and different controls depending on what we have selected. So the screamer here, just make sure this is on solo. Just trigger something here. You can see down here on the keyboard how things are laid out. Because this is an older library, we don't have a bunch of different colored keys that you normally would have in newer libraries. Also, we don't have a readout here in the information area of what each hit or loop actually is. Instead, look for blank notes. That will tell you when there's a different sort of sample set or different sort of sounds in each area, okay? So down here, for example, up here, different kind of loops in this case, right? Okay, and that's true for all of our different kinds of instruments. But on the effects here, screamer, it's on solo, pull the drive up, of course. And the screamer is kind of like a guitar stomp pedal. The Ibanez tube screamer is what this is based on. Drive up, tone up, brightness for that, lo-fi, so we can change the bits. So 16-bit, think of recording in 16-bit, recording in 8-bit, right? We get that really low, it's going to sound very, very low resolution. Pull that back up. Pull the bits down, right? Really destroy that. Now the S rate is the sample rate. And the sample rate would be the same thing that we use to record music in your DAW whenever you set your sample rate. So you can pull that down here and again, sort of destroy that with lo-fi. Then we have noise, lo-fi noise to add in there. Then we have, let me actually pull this back there, delay, pretty self-explanatory. The level, the time you want to take, divided by 16ths. So 1 would be a 16th, right? Take it up to 2, and we have an 8th note. If we take it up to 3 here, we'll have a 3/16th, dotted 8th. 4 is a quarter note, so on and so forth, right there. All right, get that delay in there. Kind of different kind of grooves, and then the feedback tail. How much is it going to feed back in? Of course, now I'll release that note. It's going to keep playing, right? Because we have our feedback so high. Then, of course, a reverb. Let's pull the level in, the size of that space, and then the damping. Sort of damp those high frequencies. If I pull this down, it gets really, really apparent. We can make it a little more transparent by pulling the damping up a bit. Right? Okay. Now we can have all of these different effects on at the same time. We just don't see them at the same time. So I can pull the delay on and the screamer on. You can see it remembered my settings there. Okay. So I have the screamer on, reverb's on, delay's on. And if you want to control these parameters in real time, you can do that. Any of these here, just right click on them, learn your MIDI CC automation. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll move a knob on my keyboard and I immediately learn that to my encoder knob. All right. So you can play in your changes. You can also, of course, depending on your DAW, on your host, add whatever you want to automate to your automation list. And of course, automate that however you happen to automate in your DAW. All right. I can also right click and remove that if I want to. All right. So let's turn all of these effects off. And another thing that might be interesting to some, sure all of those are off, and head behind the wrench here, you can actually see those effects here in the chain, which is interesting to some, not to others. There's our screamer. It's bypassed right now. So that means if I come up here, I come back here, come back to our screamer and just adjust something, come back here, come down here. Now the screamer is on. Okay. You could also add more effects like this as well, whatever you want to add as such, just like, any Kontakt library. So now down to our amp envelope, a basic ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, and release. So attack is going to lengthen the attack and make it more pad sounding. It's going to slide in. Now you'll hear this more on, we'll say something like percussion, just as an example. So take that hit, pull the attack way up, slides in. Let's find a different hit here. Let's actually replace this percussion here and just grab, say, this deep conga set. Solo that. Make sure it's on Omni. All right. Now if I pull the attack up, more like a pad, kind of slides in, right? Pull it down. Get that initial impact. Now decay determines how quickly the sound drops to the sustain level after the initial peak is reached. So you can, of course, adjust your sustain, your decay. How quickly will it decay down to that level, right? Kind of drops down faster. And you can probably hear the sustain better on something like this here. So play that. Now, if I have the decay down, so it's going to decay quicker down to this level here, play again. Decays down real quick to this level right here. Pull it up. Gets louder. Then it's going to decay down after this time to this level right here. All right. So if you want the sustain louder at that level, And the sustain corresponds to the constant volume that the sound takes after the decay until the note is released. So then we have the release. And for that, you'll really hear it with this. Right? Release the note, just stops. If I pull the release way up, release the note, I've released the note and it's still playing and sort of fading out now. Right? Still playing, not holding down anything. It's just going to fade out with that long release time. So that is your ADSR. Again, right click, learn those if you want, or automate them and get some different kinds of sounds with your samples in here. Then we have our filters, our high pass and our low pass. If you don't know what that means, we can see that visually right here. So over here is the high pass, and the high pass lets the highs pass, meaning it cuts off the lows. So anything over here would be cut out, and the low pass lets the lows pass, or it cuts out the highs. All right. And then we have a resonant filter control there, and that is going to resonate around our cutoff point. So for example, if I had a cutoff point for our high pass down here, I could have a resonant filter on that. That would look something like that. Okay. Just as a visual example. So to hear this, let's solo this up here. Pull that release down a bit. Turn the high pass on. Pull up the point, the cutoff point, cutting out the lows. Cut out the highs up here. Turn this on, actually. So just get that mid-range in there. Of course, automate those. Then that resonant filter. So if I pull this up, it will resonate around our cutoff point. Ready? Kind of a sweep. All right. Same thing for the low pass. All right. So that is your high pass and your low pass filters. Of course, they work the same way on anything here. Cut off the low, resonate around that point. Get all kinds of crazy sounds. All right. So that is the interface here for Evolve Mutations. Okay, so let's come back here to instruments now and check out what we have. So we have percussives, two different menus, and then we have mapped loop slices. What that means is this. Let me load up this menu. So it's a menu of hits or a menu of loops. You can see that back here behind the wrench. So I'm playing right here where that red dot is, that red line. See, that's the key I'm hitting. Select that. You'll see the loop right here. Right. Of course, all of these are tempo synced to our DAW. So right now I'm at 100. If I put this at 200. Much faster, right? Back to let's say 120. All right. So you can change your tempo there in your DAW or here, of course, in Kontakt as well. But our loop menu here, you can see it's tagged LPS. So our loop percussive suite, if you will. And then we have looped tonals as well. And we have some mapped loops slices, which you can see in here. MLS for mapped looped slices. Same stuff. If we come in here, stings is the tag for that. All right. AFX is ambient effects. All right. APA is our ambient pad atonal. APT is ambient pad tonal. All right. So always look at those tags if you're wondering what something is. Inst, of course, instrument, guitar, instrument, other, instrument, piano. All right. Back to our rhythmic suites here. Percussive. And here's our mapped looped slices. So score fair menu 1, or the looped percussives menu here. So that means this. If I pop into this menu, you can see, so MLS score fair menu 1, O1, C0. So that's the C0 note. Now if I load this up, just the mapped loop slice, mute this one. So on Omni, actually let me solo this one here. That's C0 note, right? Now I can move up the scale. And it's going to play back at a mapped range. So then it's an octave higher here, right? Then up here we have our slices. So you can remix that loop real easily with those slices. And you can see those slices again behind this wrench here. So here's our slices right there. You can actually read the names there too and see that slice, that slice, that slice. So you can of course play that with your MIDI keyboard, play that in a different way than using the loop here. Right. So again, C0 note, same exact thing, right? But what if I come up here to D? That's a different one, right? So D0. Same loop. There we go. So it's the same loop, but now we can map it however we want here. Of course, we have our different slices there. Okay. So that's what that means there whenever you come to that. In your score fair, it's of course a bunch of percussion. In here we have tonal percussion. Let's just clear all this out. We'll listen to these later on. Come up the scale. See, it's higher. Okay. All right. And then we have single loops in here, which is basically the same thing as they're mapped to the notes. Then percussive kits. Different stuff here. Again, all of those will have the perk tag on them. Stings and transitions. Just grab one at random. Okay. And then tonality and effects, we have melodic. Pull up my mod wheel there. As you can see, this has an MW on it. All right. So that's melodic versus pads and effects. And of course, as I've already mentioned, here's ambient effects. Ambient pad, atonal, ambient pad, tonal. All right, so that's your different instrument types. Now let's look at the multis, and multis are combinations of individual instruments, okay? So we'll look at this here. If I double click a multi or just drag it in, it's going to give me individual instruments, as you can see, and they're all saved in one file. So by default, these here are going to be mapped A1, A2, A3, right, so on and so forth, and that's my MIDI input. So I hit a note on my keyboard. I'm just triggering this one here. If I want to trigger all of them with the same note, the same MIDI track, I can put this on Omni or all on the same input. So this is A1, so I can choose A1 or I can choose Omni. Now they're both going at the same time. Of course, adjust things in here, pan around. That's the same thing for any Kontakt instrument, same thing for tune, okay? So a lot of times you might want everything sort of triggered with one note or, again, one MIDI track. And then also a lot of times you might want different instrument tracks or different MIDI tracks to trigger our different instruments in here. So this sounds pretty good all together, right? And if I want to see this reflected on the keyboard, I can just select it here. And now I have this instrument in focus for my keyboard down here. All right. You can also, of course, solo things and mute things as such. But now that I have A1 or Omni on these here, I don't have all of them, but this is enough for now. I can hit one note on my keyboard. That triggers all of them. Of course, if I have one note in my DAW, hit in here. Just one note there. As you can see right there, put this back on clips so you can actually see that a little better. Play back. Triggers everything. But if you wanted, get rid of that. If you wanted to trigger these separately, okay, then of course you would head in here and set up your different inputs for your MIDI. So put this on 2, 3, and maybe 4. Of course, you can have some on 1, maybe 2 or 3 on 1, have 2 or 3 on 2, if they happen to go together. It's on 5, and those should be okay. All right, so now with it set up like this, we'll have different MIDI tracks for each instrument here. So then you would create MIDI tracks in your DAW or whatever you happen to use. It's different for each DAW. I could also, of course, come in here. And on this instrument track, I could just change this to 2. So now I hit something on my keyboard. It's just going to trigger whatever I have set here. So this is set, of course, to input 2. I have that here, again, set to 2. If I change it to 3, down there, right? If I change it to 4, obviously it's going to play this one down here. So I'll set this back to 1, right there. And if I want separate tracks, again, set up your MIDI tracks, and then head down here and route these things to the proper instrument. So this is already on 2, this is already on 3, this is already on 4, so on and so forth. Okay, for the output here to run into Kontakt from my actual MIDI keyboard or any MIDI that you draw in on the track. If I draw something in here, this is coming out of 4 into Kontakt, so it's going to trigger this one right here. All right. So then, of course, you could program different lines, different sequences for each instrument. Okay. So up here is, again, 1, MIDI channel 1. And just say we want that, or maybe that there. Have that playing there. So in this case, we have a A2 note playing here. Then down here, grab my pencil. We have an E3 playing here and here. It's an E3. Take it down to B2 and then here. Let's pull this down. To a D1, okay? Then, of course, all of those will play and feed the proper instrument here that we have it routed to. So that's how you would program different MIDI going into different instruments here. Now I can, of course, play multiple loops at the same time, right? So maybe that's not bad. Play those in at the same time. Sounds cool. That's pretty cool. What about... That's cool too. Play them at the same time. Maybe add something up here. Right. All right, so that's 3 notes held down. I just want you to be aware that you don't have to just sit there playing single loops, right? Don't have to play just that. We can layer that. Maybe with this. Right, or maybe something up here. Layer all that. All right. And then, of course, we can layer further by throwing in more instruments and routing them the way we did previously. Let's put that there. So if you want to make your own multis, that's what you would do. You would start with something that you like, then just start building things up. So what do you need, right? Just think about what you need. Maybe a deep conga set in there. And of course, depending on how you want things routed, put that on Omni in this case. Use your amp envelope and all of your effects, as we already know how to use that. Just setting up a multi real quick here as an example. Let's grab this, throw that in there. Then we can listen to that. Adjust it. Put another one in there. Listen to that. It's a bit slower. Pull it down. This to the right. Put this one to the left. All right. And then maybe something from in here. Maybe some sort of a piano. And just for now, put it on Omni. And that there. All right. There we go. We've created a multi here. Now in this case, I'm just holding down one note, but do as we previously mentioned, if you want to use multiple MIDI tracks and trigger things, you know, with different notes on their own. But once you create a multi that you like, you can save your own multi. So it shows up here in this list. Just head up here in Kontakt to our save icon. And we're going to save our multi as, you can save a default multi, but we want to save multi as, in this case, give it a name. So whatever you want to call it, my multi, my evolve multi, my epic multi maybe, or something like that. Just call it the epic multi or whatever you want to call it, and save that. So now in my multi menu, I'll have the one I created, the epic multi, right here. So no matter what I load up, I can go ahead and get back to it really quick. That's dark and disturbing. I can, of course, switch through my multis with that arrow. Takes me to the one right under it. So in this case, the one that we just set up. And all of our routing is how we left it, okay? All of these are on Omni. If I had them on A1, A2, maybe B2, then it, of course, would load up with that sort of routing. There we go. Right back to our multi. Now, another thing you can do with your routing for your multis is actually route the audio out to separate tracks if you don't want to keep everything as MIDI. So not only can we use separate MIDI tracks, you could record all of this to audio tracks, separate audio tracks, one audio track, separate audio tracks, whatever you happen to want. So we'll just say 4 stereo tracks for now. And the rest of this sort of depends on how you have Kontakt set up whenever you initially open it. Come up here and show my outputs. I already have multiple outputs set up. So in that case, I come up here to my output for each instrument, okay? As such. And I can route that to any channel I already have present here in Kontakt. You can, of course, always create your own new outputs down here by using our output menu, selecting how many tracks you want, and of course the width of those tracks. So stereo would be 2, mono would be 1. Of course, you have multiples up here as well, but stereo and mono is what you're going to use most. Of course, create however many you want. I'm not going to. You can also name these tracks whatever you want, and that will actually show up here in your inputs in Pro Tools. So right now they're called ST2 all the way to ST14. So of course, that's the name in here, that's the name in here. If on the other hand, you don't already have your multiple outputs set up, when I come up here, you're not gonna see all of these options, but you can create a separate master output channel for each instrument like this as well. So I could create that. It's going to create that channel for me, which is right here, and it's properly named. Of course, the problem with this is now I would have to, of course, make sure this is routed properly here. Say to there and there. And in this case, hit OK on that. Of course, now we have to restart Pro Tools in this case. Make sure this isn't routed at all, or we'll have a problem. As an example. Now let me go ahead and, before I close, make sure I save this for all formats before we close. Otherwise, it's not going to work here in Pro Tools. And now we have restarted Pro Tools, and there is that output we created by, again, just use your drop down and create a separate master output channel if you don't already have yours set up. So now on my audio track, on my input, come down here to plug in, input, and you'll see this is properly named, or named according to this instrument. Now you don't have to do that. And a lot of times I'll just have my standard Kontakt outputs set to something like ST2, ST3, and then route things like that. It's just a bit quicker than having to restart every time you add a new output. But select that, okay, for the input here. I'd play, let me just solo just that one because we have it going out the audio here. And play in here. We get the input here, and that's routed into Pro Tools. So now I monitor that audio track. Now, sometimes the outputs can be a bit squirrely. You might have to come in here and mess around with things to make sure they're proper. But if it doesn't work, again, this happens sometimes. All we have to do is make sure we find the proper input. This is more Pro Tools specific. It happens sometimes, but I know it's that input right there, which is stereo 2, which is actually input or output 3 and 4 of Kontakt. Okay. Kind of weird, but more Pro Tools specific there. But now, again, with that audio track monitored, play here. There we go. All right. So in that case, that means I could take this one and just go ahead and put it out of 3. So if I solo just this one, it's going to come out of 3 right here, which here in Pro Tools, the input would be 3. Monitor that. There we go. Awesome. So now I can record that to audio either live, or of course I could set up my, put this up here, set up my MIDI first. We'll have to monitor these to hear them because we have them output here. All right, so if I like that, just as an example, for now, let's do this. Let's record audio here at the same time we actually play it in here. You don't have to do this. You can, of course, record your performance first, but let me come in here and make sure I get rid of these notes there. Now we'll record, and I'll play that MIDI in. At the same time, we're going to go ahead and record this audio, but not record this audio. We're just monitoring it, which is our score fair menu 2 down here. It's long enough for our purposes. Go ahead and stop the recording. Take that off. Take that off. And right here is the MIDI, of course, we recorded in right there. So I play that back. Let me mute this actually. Of course, because we have that audio in here routed to different outputs, we need to monitor those inputs to actually hear it. And now, if I want to record just my LPS02 Scorefair Menu 2 to its own track, just as we've done here with our Menu 1, we can record that after the fact as well. Just hit record on this track. I'll even mute this one for now. Just select that MIDI here, make sure record's not on in Pro Tools, because we don't need to actually record any new MIDI. We're just going to record the audio there. Just record that. All right, long enough for our purposes. And now we have that as audio that we can then come in here and put any plugins on that we want. So here, just this audio, which of course, again, is from the Menu 1. Then this audio here, just from the Menu 2. That is your routing here with Kontakt and our Evolve Mutations. Now let's do a demo of our instruments and multis. We're going to start with the instruments here. Just hear some of these so you can get an idea of, what it sounds like. Again, don't forget, we can layer things within the instrument, meaning trigger more than one loop at a time. And also remember our effects in here. And also remember your tempo. If you don't like the tempo I have, hey, change it in your DAW and these things will conform. That's one. That's another one. Do both at the same time. Works well together. That's kind of cool. Let's add that to it. Then maybe something from the top end at the same time. All right. Let's get an idea of what's in here. All kinds of great sounds in this. You've heard these sounds on video games, movies, movie trailers, TV shows. They're used all the time. All right. That's just a taste of the loop percussions. Menu 1, so here's Menu 2. As you should know, menus are a bunch of different, samples all contained in one interface or in one instrument, whereas the mapped loop slices are, of course, the slices that correspond to the key of each menu of what's mapped to it, okay? So if there's something in here that you want, right, like that C0 note on our Menu 2, I could, of course, come in here and just find that note right here, drag in the mapped loop sample, and I can remix that as we've already shown. But let's hear this here. Pretty cool. Of course, don't forget your tempo. You can always change it. Layering things up. Up on top here. Layer things up again. All right, tons of stuff in there. I'm not going to go through the mapped loop slices because we sort of already heard a lot of that there. We already know what that is. So if we go to tonal now, just grab something in here. Next one here. Pretty cool. Of course, I'm looking down here for different areas since we just have one color, right? So I know that because this is an empty note here, that we have different ranges of samples, all right? Different there, different here. Try this here. All right, that's cool. So of course the name of the game here is start to layer other instruments, or of course layer with the instruments that you already have in your DAW. So of course maybe some sort of a percussive thing on this as well. Might sound cool. And together. Right. And that's just how you start to really build things up. Just by coming through here and checking out your instruments. Start to layer things up. That's nice. On to our percussive kits. Only have a few of these. Let's go through all of them. Well, these are kits, which is like hits. So you can make your own grooves, stuff like this, or just use the impacts, you know. Ethnic drums re-evolved. All right, you get the idea. Hopefully. scoring hits. Nice. Perfect for that movie trailer sound. Let's go through a few of our stings and transitions. Here's a other system menu. We have a bunch of different kinds of hits here, all separated, as you can see, different loops. Of course, this combined with percussion would sound really cool. Another one here. Always head back here. Actually see these samples if you're so interested. Right there. I can reverse that if I want. In here. It's going to play from this side. I want to take this up here. But this has nothing to do necessarily with Evolve. That's just a contact feature. That's how everything works behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about. Yes. Cool sounds here. All right. That would actually work pretty well with that one we just had in here. If we had both of those. As such. All right, that sounds pretty cool. Of course, we could use our effects here, which might be cool. All right. Start layering things up to sort of make them your own. Do a couple more here. Awesome. Come in here. And this has MW, so that's our mod wheel. Change that up. SYN is, of course, synth. One more. And pads and effects. Again, AFX is your ambient effects. All right, APA is our ambient pad atonal. Of course, that would work well with some of these other ones we've already used here. Right? Really changes that up by just adding another layer of sound. So APT is the ambient pad tonal. This is MW, so mod wheel. Some water pad. All right. So that's a look and a listen of all of the types of instruments here in Evolve Mutations. Now let's move on to the multis. just to get an idea of how, all of this stuff works together. So of course, as you should know, these are mapped to different MIDI input whenever we first load it up. So again, I'll come in here, change things around just as an example. Of course, you know how to use different MIDI tracks to trigger different instruments per track. But just as an example of how things can work together, just pressing a couple notes, we'll do this here. Again, just holding down one note. Of course, adjust all your levels here. There we go. Holding down two notes now. Triggering all kinds of loops now because we're layering all of that stuff. Pretty cool. Now this multi here is the one, of course, that we created earlier, so we're going to skip over that one. We're going to replace this multi. If I hit no, it's going to merge all of those single instruments in to our current multi, and we don't want that. All right, so let's see what we got. Just this one layer. Add this in. layer that stuff up. And of course, you might want to use separate MIDI tracks for this here. Next one here. Here what we have here. All right, and of course, change that to 90. All right. Expand all those. We're on 90 BPM now. Of course, this one would probably be best to use different MIDI tracks with, so we can have different percussion going on, of course, on different tracks. All right, and last included multi here. So those work together pretty well. Just holding down one key there. All right. So of course this one here would be better with multiple MIDI tracks, but that is using your multis here in Evolve Mutations. So that is Evolve Mutations from Heavyocity for Native Instruments KONTAKT.